So, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here as we remember Max Miller. Just a reminder to please turn your cell phones onto silent if you haven't yet. Welcome to Temple Beth Shalom. We are mourning this morning the death of Max Miller, who died this past Thursday, as well as we are also remembering and honoring and celebrating the fullness of his life as a centenarian, 100-year-old man. I'm Rabbi Ethan Baer, one of the rabbis here, and on behalf of Max's, three of Max's children who are here, Ellie and Martin and David, and all of you, family and loved ones who are here from Toronto and various places, I welcome and thank you for being here to bring comfort to his family and honor Max of blessed memory. Your presence brings comfort in this time of mourning, the light of hope as we walk and accompany the mourners here among us through the valley of the shadow of death. We raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for comfort and strength. We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. Who among us has not passed through trials and bereavements? Some of us bear fresh wounds in our hearts and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others, our days of mourning may be more remote, and yet we still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to our sorrowing hearts. May our sharing of sorrow and our deeds of solace bring comfort to Martin and Francesca, Florence, Fortunato, David and Marina, and Ellie and Bill, his adult children, grandchildren, Jason, Tara, Ryan, Alexandra, Jonathan, Cosimo, and Jordan. Did I get you all? All right. And great-grandchildren, Ava, Edison, Aurora, Chloe, Jackson, and Max, as well as his beloved partner of the last quarter century of Max's life, Dora Lopez, and all who knew and loved Max closely. We turn to the words of Psalms from our tradition, where we mine our tradition for sources of comfort and strength. If you know the words in English of Psalm 23, please, you can say them with me. They're not in your program. We'll say these words. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, Max definitely dwelled in this house of the Lord regularly. His spot is right around where Dora is sitting. Dora and Max would come every Friday, pretty much, together to services for many years. And so we will definitely miss him here at Temple Beth Shalom as well. We turn to words of Kohelet. These are words from Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. So there are several of you who I think would like to speak this morning, and we're going to begin with one of Max's dear friends, Alan Richter, from here in Miami. And Alan, thank you for sharing words of remembrance with us. Make sure this is on.
I'll try to get through this. I'm not a very good public speaker, especially in these circumstances. But it's been well over 20 years since we pulled into Crandon Park Marina, just 2 slips down from where Max and Dora was. Lois and I quickly became friends with both Dora and Max. Many opportunities for a day sail with periodic trips down to the Keys and our own private flotilla. And you can remember that, Dora. Never a weekend that we didn't have an opportunity to spend some quality time together.
Weekends, Max always at the marina, if not at the dock, out on the bay, or just another summer trip to the Bahamas. Never resting, you just might find him down in the engine room, up in the mast, or maybe installing some new contraption in a boatyard. His boating days extended well into his 90s, 97 to be exact. So while we mourn our loss today, perhaps we should make this a celebration, well-deserved, to the max.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And Brian Applegate is here with his wife from Arizona. And thank you, Brian, for sharing some words as well.
How do you do? Some of you may not know that Max was in the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II. He worked as a mechanic on aircraft, and after that job was done, he went up with the pilot to make sure the aircraft was airworthy. I remember he talked about stalls, spins, aerobatics. As a fellow aviator, I recognized that gleam in his eye. I met Max in about 2003 in Crandon Park Marina. It was obvious that we were to become good friends. We had so very much in common. I'm tall, Max is not. I'm Christian, Max is Jewish. I like pickup trucks, Max likes luxury cars. Max was a proud liberal Canadian, I'm a conservative American. But we shared the love of the sea and sailing. Indeed, we had the same make a sailboat. Mine was Kai Malia. Max was, of course, to the max. Max had an understanding of sailing and the sea that very few people have. We had countless adventures, storms, and calm seas, discovering new islands together, and we shared in some failures. I moved away from Florida a few years ago, but Max and I never let too much time pass without us talking. Our sailing and aviation interests had grown into a deep friendship over the years, and I benefited greatly from his observations and wisdom. He is interested in everything and everyone around him, and sharp as a tack to the very end. My wife asked him just a few months ago, "Max, what is your secret?" He answered, "Caroline, it's all about attitude." May we all live our lives with a little more or a little more of Max's attitude. Fair winds and following seas to the Max. Rest in peace. Sail on.
Almost every time I saw Max, Dora was there at his side, his loving partner. Dora, would you like to share some words? Know how deeply he loved you and how deep your love was.
Dear friends and family, first I'd like to thank everyone here for joining us in our time of grief. I just want to say a few words to let you know what Max Miller meant to me. We have been together for 26 years, which seems like 30 because we were together most of the time for the entire day. I can honestly say the best years of my life were spent with my love. When I met Max, he dazzled me with his charm, his knowledge, his kindness, his wit, because he was very knowledgeable, and his love for life. We both felt very fortunate to have found each other. We complemented and enjoyed each other. I learned a lot from him. Since we met and spent most of our life together, we did many challenging projects, like commissioning our sailboats, and enjoyed many adventures, like months sailing alone to different islands, including the bad and scary weather. We were encountered in our many trips to the Bahamas. We traveled a lot abroad. We were a team. We shared everything together, the good times and the difficult times. He always did what was proper and had a kind heart. It was amazing. Also was respected and admired by many, including me. He never spoke ill at anyone. He never argued with anyone. He helped others many, many times. Max Miller was a good man. I'm going to miss Max a lot for many years to come, and I know that the memories we have together will give me a strength to keep going, and I will cherish him forever. I know he's watching over me. That's it.
Thank you, Dora. It's brave and beautiful. Thank you. And I'd like to call up Ellie Miller, who is the baby of the 4 children. And Ellie, please share your remembrance of your dad.
I thought of telling some funny stories about my dad, Max Miller. But my dad, with his children, was a very serious guy. He took life very seriously. He took teaching us how to be good people very seriously. And I want to honor who he was. Dad, I know you're here with us now in this beautiful temple where you had your second bar mitzvah at 100 years old, and where you loved to be here every Friday night to feel closer to God and to be with a wonderful community of people who knew you and loved you. Dad, you had a terrible, terrible week. We are all so very sorry that it was not an easy road to God, but it was a road you were on. We always knew you were a tough guy, but in this last week with you, we saw just how tough you are. We were witness to your courage and stamina as you mustered every last bit of strength to recover. But Dad, all your life, if you were in it, you were in it to win it. And you knew you just couldn't win this one. Our hearts are broken. But even now, as you are in God's arms, we know that you lived a good, long life. Thank you, Dad, for teaching us to be tough. Thank you for giving us a tough work ethic so that we could be successful and work for what we want. Thank you for your strength and your decisiveness and your unwavering dedication to self-improvement, which showed us the value of learning and education. Thank you for teaching me that independence and self-reliance was my most important insurance policy. Thank you for demonstrating the pride of accomplishment so that we could learn that effort yields rewards. And thank you for always being there to help us. All four of us have needed you, even as adults, and you have always stepped up to whatever the situation required. Dad, you were not a big guy, but you always made a big impression wherever you went. An impression that will last forever with your family and your friends and your community. We are all here now for you, Dad, loving you and knowing that you are with God and at peace.
Beautiful, thank you. And final remembrance this morning, Martin Miller, Max's oldest son.
When I came here last week to help my dad get through the operation, major one, I really never thought it would come to this. I really, really didn't. I wasn't prepared for it. I want to thank the rabbi for being there when he was. The rabbi instigated a little prayer. On Thursday, with my wife, Francesca, my sister, Ellie, Bill, Dora, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, we got together, we sang, and we prayed for God to expedite the process. Doctors told us it would take X amount of time, most likely, but thanks to the rabbi, it went real, real quick. My sister said that at this temple, she would like to speak, and she would like me to speak. I didn't prepare anything. I'm not reading from anything. And my father taught me that if you're going to do something that's worthwhile, you're going to embark on something that's worthwhile, if you want it to turn out well, you must prepare for it. And I didn't prepare for this, so I'm going to just tell you one last little, for lack of a better term, we'll say story, just maybe a half hour, 45 minutes on Thursday after my fantastic father passed away. The room was here, and there was another little kind of waiting room across, and we were over our sobbing, uncontrollable sobbing, and we were calming down. We knew most of the doctors that had attended, and all of a sudden there was two young doctors that walk up, almost pleading that we would accept whatever they were going to say to us. Unbelievable looks of sincerity and anxiousness. They were two attending doctors who attended at the actual surgery. They came to talk to Ellie and myself and Dora and Bill. We had never met them before. They just wanted to convey how absolutely, unbelievably impressed they were with this man. They never met him before. They were at his side operating on him. They must have talked to him prior to the operation. From where the operating room was to where my dad was, got to be about a good 10, 12, 15-minute walk. They walked all the way. They were so sincere. They stayed with us for 10, 15 minutes, absolutely in awe of my dad. And that's what he left with most people who met him. Thank you.
Thank you for all of those remembrances. There's not much left for me to say about him, but I will just repeat a couple things. Max was stubborn but lovable. His kids said that he was tough, stern, a good provider, and taught a strong work ethic as a father. He had his share of hardships, having grown up poor to immigrant parents in Montreal. He managed a furniture store for a long time and learned the value of money and hard work. He was a major saver, an expert at it, I understand. But with those he loved, he was fiercely dedicated and loving, even if he wasn't warm and fuzzy all the time and how he showed it. You talked about fitness as a primary value. He taught his children to exercise, eat right, and stay fit, to treat one's body as a temple. From someone who lived until 100, I, for one, am interested in following any and all health advice he had to give. For so many in the family, he was an advisor, a guide. When you spoke to him, he always asked about everyone else in your family. His family describes him as salt of the earth, a good and righteous man. Personally, I can say we will miss him here at Temple Beth Shalom. He fell in love with this temple. He came regularly on Friday night with Dora. Even I understand when he didn't feel good and was quite stoic and private about not letting that show. Right, Dora? Well, we fell in love with him in return, and we recently, as you said, celebrated his 100th birthday and his bar mitzvah here in this chapel with a special blessing, cake, and an Oneg Shabbat in his honor. Max was persistent and understood the value of showing up. He was proud to have served in the Canadian Air Force during World War II. On this U.S. Veterans Day weekend, when we're particularly conscious of the enormous sacrifices veterans have made to strengthen and ensure democracy at home and abroad, it's especially poignant to honor Max's legacy of service in the Air Force during World War II. Dora and he, partners for 26 years, they were a team. He loved her deeply, and especially in his later years, really needed you, Dora, and you were always, always there for him. In this week's Torah portion, Vayera, we learn about two important trials that God puts to Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our patriarch. In this week's Parsha, we have both the story of Abraham speaking up as an advocate for the righteous of Sodom and Gomorrah, insisting that God not punish the righteous few along with the many. But we also have the trial of the Akedah, when God asks Abraham to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac on Mount Moriah. In these two stories, Abraham acts very differently. Abraham protests and argues with God in the first story, taking the fact that God shared God's plan with him as proof that God needed Abraham as a sacred partner, that perhaps God was not fully sure of God's own plan. In the second story, the binding of Isaac, Abraham demonstrates his faith in God, allowing God to discover the mistake of God's decision, if we can be so bold, showing absolute faith that God will get it right. This mixture of intervening to avert disaster and allowing others to make their own mistakes, this is the classic balance in most relationships, and especially as a parent. In the relationship between God and Abraham, it's not always clear who's the advisor and who is the mentee. God is God, but Abraham is a needed partner, and if we can say it, a guide to God as well. When to speak up and when to be silent and accept, is there any greater lesson than learning to discern between these two? Max's loved ones have navigated that balance at every stage this past week, as you mentioned. But Max also showed his love as an advisor, as a supporter, and as opinionated and stubborn as he was, he would share his opinions with you. He also, at the most basic level, loved and accepted his children and grandchildren and his partner, Dora. So let's take a few quiet moments now to remember Max, each in our own way, as we meditate on the ways he touched our lives. We meditate on his best virtues, which we hope to strengthen within us now that his time with us is done. So now it's on us to carry on his legacy of service, persistence, and stubborn righteousness, qualities we learned from our patriarch Abraham as well. Let's take a few moments. This is a poem by Israeli poet Chana Sanesh. There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have disintegrated and are no more. And there are people whose scintillating memory lights the world long after they've passed from it. These lights which shine in the darkest night are those which illumine for us the path. We will say the words of the El Malei Rachamim now. This is a prayer, traditional prayer, which means God full of compassion. And it's the prayer we say for the ascent of the soul at a funeral service. My prayers are heard no more than anyone else's, despite what Martin said. And I ask us to say Amen afterwards. The translation is, compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence. To Max Miller, Mordecai Mendel ben Mendel the Esther Gittel, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance, and may he rest in peace. Please rise for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona Tachet Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakiha Mazhirim Et Nishmat Mordecai Mendel Ben Mendel Vester Gittel Shahalach Leolamo Baal Harachamim Yastirehu Beseter Kenefav Leolamim V'yitzror Hachayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. As we remain standing, this is a poem called Birth is a Beginning. Actually, you can sit down for a moment. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. May his memory, may the memory of Max Miller always be for blessing. Zichrono Livracha. We will save the words of Mourner's Kaddish, the traditional prayer for the graveside. So those of you who are continuing to the graveside for the burial, bring your program with you, and we will say those words of Mourner's Kaddish that praise God in the face of death when there are no other words when we're beside the grave. Thank you all so much for coming. we will conclude just with singing Oseh Shalom. This was a prayer for peace that we sang throughout the week, this week in the hospital. Prayer for wholeness and peace as we pray that peace in the heavens will come down and be with us here on earth. And we remember that even in the hardest times, even in the time of grief, that there is a hidden wholeness, that there is peace within us that we can tap into and remember. So if you'd like to stand up again and put your arms around each other, and we'll sing this prayer for peace. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Please remain standing. Funeral directors, if you would lead us in the recession with the casket and any other directions. Yes.
Just beautiful. So, folks, we're going to, as Rabbi says, we're going to be going to the cemetery, which is Beth David Cemetery. You're all welcome to come along. We do not have motorcycle escorts, so we're going to have to obey all red lights and all stop signs for your safety. You can follow with us, or you can meet us at Beth David, whatever you feel more comfortable with. At this time, I'd like to have anyone who would like to act as a last honor, as a pallbearer or escort, to please come forward, and we're going to escort Max's casket out of the sanctuary. Family will follow, and friends will follow the family. If you do want to follow us in your vehicles, folks, put your flashers on so we can see that you're part of the procession. Thank you so very much. Pallbearers, please step forward at this time. Folks, we're going to put two or three on either side. They shouldn't forget